album. And then he pulls them like a little kid. He pulls the phone from his mouth. He said, "That's him." And he started laughing in the background. Mike was laughing at my manager. "Can I speak to Teddy? I read so much about him. I study him. And I get on the phone with him, and his first thing he say, "Teddy, aren't you gonna be working on my album, aren't you?" I said, "I didn't know. I didn't know I was supposed to be, I'm just my first time even hearing about it." He said, "Oh, you guys didn't tell him he's working on the album? Yeah, he's supposed to be coming here. Can you come here this Saturday? What, if you can't come this Saturday, can you come next Saturday?" I was like, "Yes, I can come next Saturday, I promise." He said, "You promise? You gonna come?" I was like, "Yep, I'm gonna come. I'm gonna make it give me enough time to prepare and have a bunch of music for you to listen to." He said, "Oh, great." He said, you gonna be okay?" I said, "Okay, yeah, I'm gonna be great." He said, "Okay, I look forward to hearing the music. I look forward to seeing you, and I can't wait."
By the time Riley got on board, Jackson had already recorded over 50 songs, and unlike Lauren, Teddy Riley wanted Jackson to sound completely different from his earlier work. Jackson challenged Riley to create new instrumentals without relying on stock synth and drum machine sound. We talked regularly before I produced the album, and he described everything he was looking for sound-wise. He pulled out one of my songs from the Guy album, which I sing, and he said he wanted that sound. He wanted something driving like that. Riley came into the studio with the hook for Remember the Time already in mind, a track that Jackson loved from the outset and worked tirelessly on to perfect. Riley reworked some of Lauren's productions such as She Got It and Serious Effect, and then continued work on Jam and Dangerous. By early 1991, Michael Jackson had finished the track list, which included several songs he recorded with Riley: Remember the Time, Dangerous, and In the Closet. But Jackson was relentless and would continue to produce more tracks or spend endless hours tweaking and revamping others. When the deadline came, he wanted to do more and more songs, Riley told Rolling Stone in 1992. And his manager came and said, "Teddy, you and Michael, you're not up to your sneaky stuff. Do not write another song." Executives at Sony set a hard deadline for the album, wanting it released before Thanksgiving 1991. Acting for the first time as an executive producer with a revamped team of collaborators, Michael no longer had the structured parameters Quincy Jones implemented in which to create music. For the last 2 months of recording, Jackson and Sweetie in rented hotel rooms located 4 minutes from Record One so they could get back to work as soon as possible. Riley said, "When the deadline came, Jackson wanted to do more and more songs, and then when Michael saw the commercial for Dangerous, the David Lynch thing, we started working hard to get it finished." Time-strapped and riddled with self-doubt, Michael Jackson brought in his former producer to hear the final record as a quality controller for the project. Quincy Jones complimented Riley on his production, and he said to Jackson it was a masterpiece and that it's ready to come out. The final album, now titled Dangerous, was completed and fully mastered by Halloween, with a worldwide release date of November 26, 1991. At the time of its release, Michael Jackson gave an interview where he said the goal for his album had been to create something with as much of a cultural significance as Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Suite. In 1,000 years from now, people would still be listening to it, something that would live forever. In this pursuit, the album artwork illustrated those lofty ambitions. Foregoing another relatively simple headshot and title combo, Jackson commissioned surrealist artist Mark Ryden to create a highly detailed portrait of himself filled with symbolism and mystery, taking hundreds of hours to create. Mark Ryden had previously worked on many other projects with the art director for Sony, Nancy Donald. So when the commission was proposed by Jackson, she thought of him right away. Ryden then met with the King of Pop in the recording studio, where he could hear some of his new music and talk about their ideas. Michael was a fan of circus posters from the beginning of the last century and had an idea of what types of images he wanted on the cover. Ryden then had a week to create some strokes, doing 5 pencil drawings. One was a circus poster with a skeleton jumping from the innards of a clown. Another was focused on a girl who, in her hands, she held a skull. The scene was set outdoors, and Michael Jackson's eyes were mixed with clouds. Mark Ryden revealed how the first sketches for the cover of Dangerous drew heavily on Jackson's 1989 single, Leave Me Alone, and its video saying that, "I really like a lot of the same things as Michael. The video for Leave Me Alone made me crazy the first time I saw it. It inspired me a lot." 4 of the sketches were rejected, but Jackson was pleased with the concept for the final one, and it was chosen to be reproduced as a painting. The cover was Mark Ryden's biggest project to date and demanded 6 months of hard work. Michael was open enough to let me work. He made some specific additions to the painting once it was finished. He wanted his friend Macaulay Culkin to be in one of the attraction cars in the lower right corner, as well as the boy who was half black and half white was something that Michael also wanted to add. The final artwork blew minds wide open. However, we can only speculate the work's hidden meanings, as Mark Ryden later refused to explain the complex scene. "I feel that if a painting is explained away, something's lost for the viewer," he answered. "I'm more interested in how other people interpret the image themselves." Jackson's piercing gaze through what looks to be a gilded gold mask with one lock of curly dark hair falling over his forehead as he oversees a circus-inspired foreground with an off-kilter collection of animals, celebrities, and other real-world objects. Michael's eyes appear to be inspired by the image taken for his previous album cover, For Bad. Michael's love of animals was well documented, and his Neverland Zoo was one of his most prized possessions. Above is the face of a monkey, presumably Jackson's pet Bubbles, as he is about to be crowned by winged cherubs. Right in the center are a group of various animals, a peacock, an accurate representation of glamour and gorgeousness of the entertainment world, a rhinoceros, a wasp, a walrus, and so on. Depicted is also an elephant with the number 9 on the front, as that number next to 7, the most prominent in numerology. In addition to being a prominent number in numerology, the number 9 also signifies the Jackson family household, comprising 6 brothers and 3 sisters. One of the elephant's tusks is notably broken, perhaps signaling the plight of this endangered creature in the wild. On either side of Michael's eyes are 2 faces of clowns with bonnets. Both represent the circus, but also the theater, as they are in the classical view of a theatrical performance, with one crying and one laughing. Michael, an admirer of the masters of world painting, has added works inspired by the classics. One is inside a crystal ball, and the other, on one of the pillars, is the Dog King. The image is inspired by the painting Napoleon on his throne by artist Jean-Auguste Ingres in 1806. The figure recreated by Ryden has the head of an Afghan dog, a common motif among noble families. His right hand sports a glittering sequined glove, and atop his head is a shimmering crown with MJ embroidered into the design. Also of note, the king's scepter is adorned with a bird head, a subtle reference to his queen on the other side. On the right, we have the Bird Queen. Rather than drawing upon one particular work, Ryden juxtaposed features from both Queen Elizabeth I and Queen Elizabeth II. Many of the finer details appear to be taken from a 1592 portrait of Queen Elizabeth I by Marcus Gerhards. Other details like the crown, scepter, and golden orb appear to be inspired by a 1953 photograph of the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II by Cecil Beaton. This time, Ryden replaced the Queen's head with that of a kingfisher bird. The mechanical gears revealed inside the Queen's gown may have been a tribute to Charlie Chaplin's 1936 film, Modern Times. The epic comedy film was written and directed by Chaplin himself, and features his iconic Little Tramp character struggling to survive in the modern industrialized world. The film is a comment on the desperate employment and financial conditions many people faced during the Great Depression. In the bottom central scene is a kind of galactic belt surrounding a world upside down in a similarly industrial scene befitting of Fritz Lang's cinematic masterpiece, Metropolis. The floor is covered in symbols that represent hazards like caravels and pistols, technological advances such as rockets and mysteries of science, as well as atoms and chains and particles. Taken together, this imagery seems to suggest a dystopian society It is in stark contrast to the utopian one we would expect from the image of a globe. Perhaps it is not far-fetched to say that it represents both sides of the equation, as the first step to healing the world is properly recognizing its wounds. On the left is an entry to a kind of ghost train or labyrinth of terror. On board the cars are, again, the monkey Bubbles, a rat possibly referencing his first solo hit Ben, an antelope, and an elephant. This entrance is flanked by a classic pirate symbol, no doubt signifying adventure and wandering into the unknown. The outcome of this corridor or ghost train shows everything has changed. Bubbles has disappeared, and instead sits Michael during his days as a child superstar. No career retrospective would be complete without a nod to the magic that started it all. Not too far from a young Michael is an adult Michael at the prime of his youth during the Thriller era. Ryden appears to have juxtaposed these two images of Michael to highlight important milestones in his career. Behind is the skeleton of an elephant man, and behind the skeleton is Jackson's friend, a happy Macaulay Culkin. An all-seeing eye appears on the upper facade of the tunnel exit, an allusion to the cryptic emblem of yore. Perhaps this is meant to inform the viewer that although they are in for some unexpected surprises on their journey, it's worthwhile to keep an eye out on who else might be watching. The half-opened hand of Michael Jackson, identified by the band-aids on the fingertips. Standing on his palm is a black child holding the skull of an unknown creature. There is an interesting dichotomy here between the past, prehistoric creature, and the future, the young child. Perhaps this image highlights the plight of poor and starving children in Africa and around the world. On its palm also appears a world map depicting the presence of Michael Jackson as a worldwide star, as well as his desire to heal the world's plights with those very hands. On the wrist is the number 7. As previously said, next to 9 are special numbers in numerology. Also included is the image of P.T. Barnum, creator of the world's most famous circuses, as an explicit homage to this cover's circus scene. An American politician, showman, and businessman in the 19th century, Barnum is remembered for promoting celebrated hoaxes and for founding the Barnum and Bailey Circus. The circus business was the source of much of his enduring fame. His showmanship and entertainment savvy was a huge inspiration for Michael Jackson when crafting his public persona. It was said that he religiously read Barnum's autobiography to better understand the tactics that made his showmanship so spectacular. Jackson aspired to have his life and career be the greatest show on Earth. The man behind the curtain pulling the levers and calling all the shots to keep the show going, his eyes peering from behind the spectacle he has created around him. Michael Jackson had ambitions to create the greatest show on Earth, and a spectacle is what the album caused, as so perfectly illustrated in the launch campaign of its lead single, Black or White. A title Michael Jackson engineered knowing it would give the media much to talk about, given the long-standing controversies over his unexplained and progressively lightened appearance in recent years. It's hard to comprehend how big the worldwide debut of Black or White was, with its star-studded music video grand premiere taking place on the night of November 14, 1991. The broadcast was screened simultaneously across multiple networks: MTV, BET, VH1, and Fox, as well as 27 other countries to a record-shattering 500 million viewers. Michael's ambitious video spectacle was marked by the return of Thriller director John Landis, who in his own words, got brought onto the ambitious project after several other directors failed. This is Michael's piece, an extravaganza.
Hey you, can I learn your flavor? It's brand new. Now it's in the papers, all I seem to see. Must be something underneath. Take 2, I'm still trying to figure out what makes you hard on the call. I guess it comes from your heart, 'cause when your head's right, you take your time. There's something about the love and things you like. Fire when the strobe hits.
Insane, said the director. With some of his ideas, I say, Michael, I hate that. With some of my ideas, he'll say, John Landis, I hate that.
I liked Michael very much, very fond of him. He was nuts, you know, I mean, he really was.
On Black and White, it was more difficult because that was his, and my job on that one was trying to like make him not look quite so nuts.
The multi-million-dollar shoot was ambitious from the outset, considering the video's assortment of lavish sets, live locations, and groundbreaking special effects. But Michael's notorious flakiness also added delays and extra costs to the 6-week production, causing the video to go way over budget, costing as much as $4 million as a result.
And I said, Mike, if we do this, you have to show up. If you're late, I'll go home. I'll show up. And we had a day that was probably a $180,000 day. We had Luma Crane and 70 dancers. It was a big deal, right? And Mike and Macaulay Culkin, they didn't show up. It's like, well, where's Michael? And when we finally found him, he and Mac had gone to a Toys R Us.
Fire, and why does it? What's the word? Burn. I should have interpreted it word for word, but The Little Mermaid, the song was part of your world, and Emily had such amazing interpretations of all of the times that in the song Ariel is like searching for these words.
Sisters, we're not going to take it video. Went tells Culkin to turn his music down before Culkin blasts his guitar at a Spinal Tap level of absurd noise, causing Went in his bark lounger to burst out the roof of the house, eventually landing in Jackson's fantasy world. The artist then begins to perform the track, turning up in various locations around the world, dancing and interacting with its native people, whilst incorporating his own dancing style with that of the different cultures he meets. Michael is seen on the plains of Africa, the Vasquez Rocks in California, and outside traditional Russian architecture, singing and dancing with African tribesmen, Thai women, Native Americans, an Odissi dancer from India, and a trope of Hopak dancers. At the song's bridge, Michael triumphantly walks through fiery images of war and injustice before the mid-song rap by LTD is lip-synced by Hopak. Michael sings the final chorus from the statue of Liberty's torch while other world landmarks live in the background. The song closes with a lip-synced performance by people of various races, one face morphing into another, seamlessly using computer-controlled special effects called feature-based morphing. This scene marks the first use of this technology outside the Neighbor motion picture and the young Tyler Banks' feature just on the cusp of achieving supermodel status. Aside from the video, the music itself is produced by Michael Jackson and Bill Backus. The catchy upbeat tunes of fusion of pop rock, dance, and hip-hop. Its message is simple, but it doesn't matter if you're black or white. Calling for global unity, inclusion, and protest against racial violence. Released less than 6 months after the savage beating of Rodney King's Angela Davis, and 7 months after 15-year-old Natasha Harding was shot in the back of the head by the South Korean schoolroom in Los Angeles, racial tensions were at an all-time high. Jackson used the strongest weapon in his arsenal to create a lasting reminder of his desire for a utopia unattainable by race, positioning himself as part of the solution against the fight that simply comes as part of the black experience. No doubt a purposeful move on his part to actively attempt to reconnect with his black audience. Indicative of a more acidic tone in Jackson's image, songs and subject matter during the 1990s, the statement "I ain't scared of no sheets, I ain't scared of nobody," is an unmistakable one-line lyrical middle finger against the terrorists and white rebels who lacked the courage to give their bigotry a face, and yet boldly rode around, burning churches and inciting violence. For the first time, Jackson was singing about an America in which people of color could be tried and found guilty for unjust reasons. He was attempting to encourage racial unity by singing of a love that was pure irrespective of race, and also cognizant of the flaws in a society that desperately needed to be healed. A bold and commendable move to make at the height of his fame and Black powers, knowing full well his statement was destined to be broadcast into the living rooms of millions in white middle America and beyond. If the main video didn't achieve it, then the last segment was guaranteed to make Jackson a target of new pundits and social conservatives as he shapeshifts into a Black Panther, symbolically showing public support for a black political group labeled fascist. and a threat to white American civilians. Morphing back into himself for the next 4 minutes, he dances furiously in the street, destroys a glass beer bottle, a building window, and a parked car. He tears off his shirt and screams with grand drama as the hotel neon sign falls. After his damaging rampage, he reemerges into a panther. The final scene involves Homer and Bart Simpson, resulting in Homer angrily turning off the TV. The static then cuts to a close-up of Jackson with the tagline, "Prejudice is ignorance." Coined the Panther Dance scene, an immediate media backlash ensued. Many were outraged by Michael Jackson's careless portrayal of street vandalism and violent aggression, while conservatives complained about the more sexual...
Says it all. That says it all. That's just ridiculous.
It may seem like small potatoes, especially when compared to other artists like Prince and Madonna's output at the time. But the difference is that Prince and Madonna had carved themselves out as provocative performers. Michael Jackson was as family-friendly and non-threatening as they came, so what else was to be expected? Michael Jackson intended to channel the Panther's animalistic nature through his dance moves, but due to public backlash, Jackson also issued an apology for any pain or hurt that the final segment of Black or White has caused children, their parents, or any other viewers, the artist continued. It upsets me to think that Black or White could influence any child or adult to destructive behavior, either sexual or violent. However, the controversy didn't stop the album's lead track from becoming a bona fide smash hit upon its release in November 1991. Reaching the top of the Billboard Hot 100 chart just 3 weeks after it was released, staying there for 7 weeks. It was the fastest chart topper since the Beatles' Get Back in 1969. Black or White topped the charts in over 20 countries, making him the first artist to have #1 hits in the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s. Truth be told, in a world that nicknamed Michael Jackson Wacko Jacko, it was in fact the world who was wacko for Jacko. A notion his record label would capitalize on during the campaign that ensued as part of the rollout of the Dangerous album. Symbolizing a musical breakthrough with the shattering of glass, the album opener wastes no time announcing the King of Pop's furious return. In place of the pristine cinematic sound of Bad is something more attuned to the real world, and with a palpable sense of urgency. Beginning with Jam, the first disc of the record is dedicated to Riley's New Jack Swing influence. Lyrically, the song might sound simple enough on the surface, Michael Jackson often stating that he was only at one on stage, finding his own inner peace and using performance as a method to temporarily escape worldly issues. I have to find my peace, as no one seems to let me be. False prophets cry of doom. What are the possibilities? I told my brother there were challenges, fears. We must live each day like it's not. Go with it, Jim. Teddy Riley pilots this sense of freedom in a giant open rhythm consisting of electronic drum sounds, turntable scratches, and popcorn sounds. In Riley's words, Jam was a track that Michael had the idea for. He told me to see what I could do with it, so I took it and created some more instruments and reproduced the record. And then left it. Ironically, having rejected Prince and James's idea of a Run-DMC collaboration, hearing that rap music was on the rise, Jackson and Riley drafted into Heavy Duty, who had previously worked with Riley's group Dive and Sister Jen the previous year, to perform the rappers in the song. It was my idea that the rapper Heavy Duty perform on Noise One. He was Michael's favorite rapper at the time, including Riley. So look, I just put together this minute. So I was like, why are we going to do regular music? Because regular football didn't seem, it just seemed so out of my reach. So finally, after enough time at the position that he took, I called Princeton and Princeton could you call anything to let me get initially that he looked at me and Princeton told me about like 5 minutes later, yeah, you tell you just wanted to eat for money. Video shot a meeting with the main words. The other being basketball megastar Michael Jordan. In both their prime, the musical and sporting legends idolized as countless while music and nothing progress. came together to flex their respective craft. The concept was for Jackson to teach Jordan the bass, and then train Jordan to teach Jackson the guitar.
He came to me about doing jams. I told him it would take some time because it was a playoff. And he said, basically, we can work on that good. We'll keep up on that guy. What I admire is he's proud of his You can see that he's in front of the camera and his music is playing at the front. I'm in front of the camera, I'm playing basketball.
The video director was a come-out remembers. We found this rat-infested, abandoned, bombed-out army in a neglected neighborhood in Chicago. The production went into the neighborhood under the guise of a mayonnaise commercial. Neither the police nor the landlord really knew what we were planning. Michael Jackson arrived in a motorhome. We built a tunnel for him so he couldn't really be seen entering the building. He was followed shortly by Michael Jordan, who drove himself. As for filming the superstars together, there wasn't a whole lot of direction. It was easier just to play the music and let them go, either dance or play basketball. It was so loud that they couldn't really talk, so they had to let the music tell them how to behave. The disused urban location was befitting of the song's explosive chant-like tone. B-boys and B-girls are consistently featured throughout the video, paying homage to the African-American and Puerto Rican youth who have originated so many styles of street dance, which was then perfected and tuned to fit the moves of the King of Pop. With appearances by Chris Cross and Naughty by Nature, this was Jackson's most visible attempt at crossing over into the hip-hop and rap genre, which was now so influential in music of the 1990s. Seeing it as a potential vehicle to capture the hearts and minds of a wider, younger audience. At the same time being cautious not to veer too far from the 70s and 80s melodies his fans loved him for. Therefore, Epic Records commissioned 24 remixed incarnations of Jam, created by 7 remixers, placed depending on the radio station or club it was to be played at. "We could give one version to everybody," said Michael Kaplan, Vice President of Artists and Repertory at Epic Records. "But we live in such a specialized time, in such a fragmented radio world, that what we're doing is super serving our clientele. This meant club disc jockeys can spin a hip-hop remix while radio programmers fearful of irritating older listeners can choose a version that excuses Heavy D's rap section." Released as the second single from Dangerous, Remember the Time was often cited as Michael Jackson's return to his R&B roots, and compared to his 1980 single block of music. Written and composed by John Lennon, Michael Jackson implemented that. The laser track was intended to make Ryan's new Jack swing. I recall that Jackson's vocal delivery on this song
his terminology of smash is a record that is on the charts. That's more than 5 weeks. Number 1. That's a smash. A record that's on the chart for 1 week or 2 weeks.